Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to everybody. It's our first show of the new year after the Christmas break, and we're going to, as always, start with a bit of news, bit of topical, political rather, news.
Political?
Polypickle. Polypickle news. And then we're going to talk a bit about technology, cyber cover, AIG, and maybe what we're looking forward to, Ben, in 2026. I'll just throw that out there as a new item on the agenda.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, let's start then. Let's start with the political news.
Political news.
Polka dotty news. Yeah, this is a interesting 24 hours for Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. Kind of their well, it's very, very interesting. I think everybody kind of knew it's such a good Sun headline. It's so good. I think everybody knew that Jenrick was not happy after he lost the leadership contest. However, years ago, was it 18 months? A year ago. And he's been posting those funny little videos, hasn't he? That have been going more and more right wing as we've been going on. But it was really interesting yesterday when Kemi found a copy of his resignation video or whatever, and decided to boot him out before he made his big exit.
Yeah, I mean, found in the sense that probably it was given to somebody by somebody in the office, perhaps. Who knows?
Maybe.
You know, such a trustworthy bunch, politicians, as we know, and I mean, someone on Times Radio, which I can highly recommend to people, was saying that they've been sort of reporting on politics for 35 years, and yesterday was the most jaw-dropping day they'd ever had in politics. And I kind of think it probably isn't exaggeration. I mean, it's just the Conservative Party and its machinations is just the party that keeps giving, isn't it? And what you see on the surface is absolutely nothing to do with what's going on behind the scenes or in reality. But I also think that I was thinking about a corporate world where you leave a job and you generally don't leave under these sort of circumstances, even if they're not good, which often they aren't. You say things like, thank you, the LinkedIn kind of thank you very much for a fantastic 10 years. That you don't mention the fact that you were abruptly and dumped from the organization or whatever happened, or very few people will share that information. Probably shouldn't. But here it's like, sack him. Then he appears at the rather pantomime reform thing where he doesn't turn up, and then they think he's not going to. And Farage was actually quite funny at that. And then he's got this huge prepared speech, which to me sounded like the bid for the leadership of reform, or quite frankly, the bid for the leadership of anything, which makes me think he is just this. He's become kind of obsessed with becoming the leader and power.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was kind of reflecting on it in just to bring it back to kind of our world and leadership and trying to lead big organizations that, on the surface have, a corporate brand, a message and everything else. But actually, it's very difficult to keep hold of the little pockets of those organizations that maybe don't either agree with that brand or direction, or don't see it in their personal interests to pursue that and go off and do different things. And we've seen it, there's loads of examples in industry, and particularly in the London market. But it's quite fascinating. I think it's fascinating how they got ahead of it, and like in terms of sacking him first before he left. So get ahead of the story, which was, I think, was probably the only card she had to play, but she played it pretty well, and she comes across pretty strong in that video. And then it's kind of like, well, it's like, yeah, the whole thing has again been blown open, like you say. What's the point of any of it, really? Nobody,
well, I think
really agree on.
That's particularly. I mean, there was a very a book came out, I think, a few years ago, which was around and about in the media, and it was about how politicians are different because they have this kind of psyche, which is both entirely kind of obsessed, as I just said, with kind of power and how important that is, but also they're thick-skinned, and I think it was relating a lot to Liz Truss, but so thick-skinned that they don't get hurt as normal people do by all this kind of stuff, And I was thinking yesterday, blimey, Jenrick must be feeling quite down after that Badenoch kind of announcement that he was fired and he was being treacherous and all that sort of thing. But of course, no, he bounces in the room and he's got this massive speech, and it's as if none of it, has touched him. And normal people, I think me included, would be feeling quite deflated, I think, after a day like yesterday. But it's and it is to some extent part of the game. It's not like it's unusual, but it's got to it's reached such a point now where you kind of can't, it is jaw-dropping. You think, God, it can't get any more ridiculous until you see the elected leader of Venezuela handing her Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump. And then the Nobel laureate, the Nobel Association says, you're not allowed to transfer them. It says, does that say it in the small print? You've won the Nobel Peace Prize, but you can't just give it to like your wife or a random politician who thinks he should have it.
That's so funny. Oh dear, the world is gone crazy, huh?
Non-transferable Peace Prize.
Oh God. Anyway, let's bring it back then. We could talk all day about politics. It is funny.
It's fantastic. Yes, it's a fantastic pantomime.
It is. I'm reading lots of politics books at the moment, and it is funny. Like some of them date really quickly. They only published 18 months ago, and it just the world has changed. It's so.
Just as an aside, Liz Truss has a channel on LinkedIn which is well worth following. Again, talking about people who have no self-awareness.
Yeah, there we go. Like us. So let's move on. Shall we talk about a bit of news? Ben, you spotted this one. AIG edges back towards risk. I can't read this headline. What's this? AIG edges back towards risk 2 decades after financial crisis bailout. Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's long and it could be read in different ways. AIG edges back towards risk. Anyway, let's not do that. I think this is fascinating because AIG is an iconic brand in insurance. We all know that. It was, the biggest gorilla on the block. Now, just give you these numbers, right? In 2000, the year 2000, actually it's a long time ago now, it was a $230 billion company. And do you know how much it is now?
No.
For £43, no. 43 billion. But that's almost everything about AIG, despite its brand is still there, right? Important. It is really a shadow of its former self in terms of, and it's mainly, and it was in 130 countries, and it's now mainly in the US. Of course, it has. We know they're in London. We know they're in the main hubs, but still, it is nothing like it was, post the financial crash and it going bankrupt. Yeah. So, Peter Zaffino, pictured, has just retired, just retired, and a guy called Eric Anderson is taking over. And obviously, we know about the John Neal saga and all that sort of stuff and other things that are going on there. But they are now saying they're going to come back into play to write more risk than they have been doing. So be less conservative. They're talking about using AI to write risk. They've done a deal with Onyx and Convex, which we've talked about before, which was in the media just before Christmas. And so they're calling it re-risking. It's a new bit of jargon, a new word, re-risking.
Got it.
I think that means growing, basically.
Yeah.
Underwriting policies, not underwriting policies. Because probably, actually, if you go from 230 billion to 43, you have to really work hard. It's a bit like that. What was that Eddie Murphy film where he had to get Eddie's Millions, was it? Where he had to get rid of $1 million in 2 days or something.
Yeah, that's it.
Brewster's Millions.
Brewster's Millions. Yeah.
Yeah. But you have to work hard to get rid of 187 billion or whatever it is. So they've done that, and Zaffino's left. Now, the share price did drop when Zaffino went because he has been, given the testament of turning the company around. Well, turning the company around from 230 billion to 43 billion doesn't seem like much of a turnaround. But what they mean, of course, is profitability. It is actually profitable now, just. So they're resizing. They've got a deal with Everest Re to access their client base and all this sort of stuff. So, and to be fair, I think it's fair that we, Grace Church, are seeing a bit of a rise of AIG in some of our data too. So it's interesting what they do with their brand and how they come back into the market, because they are still not what they were, but they are potentially going to become a force again.
Yeah,
and that's interesting, because they have they are quite distinctive in a lot of ways. There's a lot of negatives, related to AIG in lots of ways, but it has a particular way of working, which you might say is more at the Ryanair end of things than the high service end. But that's just a viewpoint, a subjective, perceptual viewpoint. So we'll see. Very interesting, though. Very interesting. And this is coming back into a soft market. Tough time to do it, but they think it's worth it. So really, really, I think fascinating, because it's been a bit, kind of dead in the water really for a long time.
Does it say in the article what's kind of changing that drive? Is it the leadership change and they need to come in with a different, message and story, or do they see genuine opportunities in the risk landscape as it kind of changes? And we're going to talk a little bit about cyber later, but yeah.
Hard to say, Jeremy. I can't read even between the lines on that, other than I think it does seem like they feel it's worth coming back in and growing. And if they don't grow, where do they go? I suppose is that. So maybe it's a natural point in which they're making some profit now. They feel they really can move forward. They've stripped it back enough to do that, and it's taken a long time. The other thing is potentially around technology, which they do touch on, which is around AI and how they use that. And that I think, therefore, they might be thinking that actually the cost of running a big P&C business might be more efficiencies, which we kind of can talk about in another show. But that's definitely on the table here. So they could say that actually investors might see us doing nothing as a bad move at a time when actually the industry becomes more efficient and margins increase, and it's profitable. So shareholders could be pushing this too. I don't see that they are saying that there's new opportunities in product lines or things like that, but they are dealing with obviously businesses that have been active, like Convex and others who they are partnering with or working with and investing in.
Yeah. Good. Well, we'll see how that develops over the coming weeks and months, I suppose.
Yeah.
Good. Right. Let me come in. So I saw a interesting piece. I saw it on LinkedIn. It's a insurance business piece just talking about P&C insurers still dabbling in Gen AI. This is a Bain and Company kind of survey.
Yeah.
And it highlights kind of a lot of, or it reflects rather, a lot of the research that we've been doing ahead of TINtech London Market, which I'll come and talk on in a second, which basically says that organizations rather, in the London market that I'm focused on, are putting together a lot of proofs of concepts around this is talking particularly about claims, but claims underwriting, data ingestion, those types of things. But what they're really struggling with is trying to move from these small proofs of concepts into adoption across the organization, and it's very difficult. My feeling is ahead of TINtech London Market, when talking to people, to actually get that done. Yeah. And there are a number of reasons for that. I just thought I'd talk through some of the research that I've been doing. So I think there is a gap between the kind of the hype and the reality to start off with. So I think there is a view within executive boards around what these capabilities of AI are, and actually when they get implemented on the ground, it doesn't work like many IT sales pitches. It doesn't work exactly to the detail that has been originally proposed. So there is that kind of gap between the kind of the sales line, the hype, or whatever it is, between the operational reality on the ground. I then think there's a whole lot of, and we've talked about this before, sort of discrete innovations going on without a kind of strategic overview or direction. So this lack of a holistic approach to generative AI or AI initiatives, rather than going, okay, this is what we would like to do in underwriting. These are the obvious friction points. Are there pieces of technology or tools out there that can help us overcome these? Rather than it's coming the other way around, people are kind of dabbling, as the article says, or coming up with these very small proofs of concept that are not kind of joined up. So the structural problems that we've got in the industry of kind of silos working just within their own field, not understanding the way that data impacts either up or downstream, not having kind of that, as I was saying, kind of holistic view of these changes, doesn't really move the dial. And when it comes to trying to scale up these projects, you hit these kind of friction points where people aren't brought in. I think there's also a problem with the business case. It's still pretty expensive, this technology, if you compare it to traditional ways of solving problems, for example, outsourcing or offshoring. But that is changing. So this is quite interesting. So a number of people have said that the business case now is not a kind of a dollar sign at the end of it saving. It's more about building up capabilities so that when as these tools and capabilities develop and become more sophisticated, they're in a better place in order to take advantage of them. So I think there is a fear that, doing nothing is a conscious decision, and I think does impact your ability to compete and perform in the future. So there are a number of people talking about, well, actually, it may be expensive to deploy this capability now, but look, it puts in resilience against a whole bunch of people leaving, or, you know, our offshoring functions closing down, or, you know, going bust, or whatever it is. So I think, you know, coming back to my holistic point, I think people are kind of stepping back, and rather than going, okay, what's the dollar sign saving on that transaction piece, it's kind of what are the capabilities we're building into our operating model that allow us to compete more effectively in the future. So it's interesting, and that was quite an interesting article and survey that kind of flowed into some of the themes that I'm sure we'll be touching on at TINtech London Market in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
Do you think that it's also because we're not quite at the tipping point of having data through the whole process, from, say, a risk being discovered, identified, and then underwritten, and so on? You know, that is still very, I mean, there is work going on in that, which we can talk about in future shows, but it seems to be making a lot of progress. But until you've got that data through the value chain, it's really quite hard. Everything becomes kind of like just little islands of products trying to prove themselves in vast bureaucracies.
So I think that there's 2 things I'd say about that off the back of a couple of conversations that I've had. So in terms of the data flowing, this kind of idea about data quality and data standardization. So on the data quality piece, you kind of obviously need quality data in order to make a decision, whether that is like a human or a computer. That is kind of it. So there is a piece of work that needs to be done. But as you move into a more of a digital space, then that data quality becomes more important, because, you know, as humans, we put context around the data we receive. You know, I've worked with you for a long time, Ben. So when you send me an email, I know the context. You know, you might just put the show, and I'll know exactly what that's about and deal with it in a way, whereas a computer probably wouldn't do at this point. So there's a kind of data quality thing. The standardized thing is really interesting. So a broker that I was speaking to, talking about, they don't need standards as a, you know, an industry standard. They just want people to kind of operate in a standard way. So if you if you send me an email and every time it says the show, I go, okay, I know what that is, and the computer will know what it is. If you then send me a PDF, and then next week you send me a spreadsheet, and then the following week just do, it's really difficult to try and automate, you know, differences in that.
So that has to be entirely consistent and standardized. You're right. I mean, I get that completely. Otherwise, stuff gets lost as well, doesn't it? I mean, that's one of the big things you hear, is that all sorts of documents through a process in insurance get lost, and then you have to backtrack through the whole process manually to find things and add things. Whereas if you've got data already in the system embedded and it's good quality, that massively speeds everything up.
Yeah.
And there's this link between finding a risk and it ending up in the ops function.
So it's sort of all that, you know, errors, going back, you know, checking data. What does this mean? You know, all that kind of rework is a big cost. And so there is a problem there. So it's interesting. It's fascinating. But that was an interesting story I saw on LinkedIn. Insurance business. And I'm sure, as I say, one we'll be covering at TINtech in a couple of weeks' time. TINtech London Market. Okay. We talk about cyber cover.
Yeah. We've covered it before, and this is an article from a little while ago, but I just used it because it's to intro some other stuff that we've talked about. I was at the Bieber launch of their manifesto at Houses of Parliament on Wednesday, and nice event, well run. Bieber launched its manifesto, in which we are in there. Commitment number 6. We are. If anybody would like to read it, we'll do that, and then we'll do that next week, perhaps. But anyway, the event is a launch of the manifesto, but also it's a link up into the governmental side of things. So there was a minister speaking, an MP, and then the FCA. So they all mention the importance of AI and what they're doing to encourage and grow in that area, and also resilience was mentioned about 100 times. So cyber insurance, the issue with cyber insurance, and I think Graham Chudgill, the CEO of BIBA, mentioned this in his speech, was, you know, in the smaller end of things, businesses, they aren't buying cyber. And of course we've talked and others have talked about, why did JLR not have cyber and the Co-op not have cyber when they were hacked. So I thought I'd just kind of reprise what this article's saying, which wasn't too bad. And this is really aimed at the top end of the market. So what the article says is, and this is from Marsh, 60 to 70% of FTSE 100 companies have cyber coverage. But and what the kind of broking side says is that the policies in place are exactly what M&S and JLR, well, not just M&S, but JLR, but they're exactly designed to cover what happened to M&S and JLR, which is a hack, and then all the things around it. And they cover non-physical damage, BI, incident response, triaging, PR, systems fixes, ransomware negotiations, all that sort of stuff. They tend not to nowadays cover ransom payments because they don't do that anymore, and they're not in these policies. So that's mainly covering, but it's covering first party costs associated with attack plus damage to third parties, which is interesting because a lot of the JLR stuff was about business interruption to third parties, to suppliers, which again, actually, funny enough, was was mentioned by BIBA, and they have a CFC have come up with an innovative new insurance policy that allows those suppliers to companies hit by an a hack to claim insurance. So that's kind of interesting, and well done to CFC and BIBA on that. So, but the problem the article here talks about, and I'll just expand it, is it's really, there's quite a lot of skepticism about cyber and its policies, even by those who buy it. And so they're kind of worried about carve-outs and things that are not included, particularly war-related risks, which has been a thing we've talked about before. So whether cyber is a war, you know, was it a state-driven attack, or was it just a 14-year-old in the bedroom type thing? Yeah. And also it's got quite complicated. So they're saying that Lloyd's, for example, the cyber policies, 148 versions of a war exclusion wording are now in place or in situ, and that makes it very complicated. And the AI related stuff that they're trying to now work out in policies is also making that more complex, because there are these other liabilities arising out of using AI or errors related to. So which is kind of all understandable in a sense. So also premiums have been coming down a lot, and obviously we know though that is causing problems in terms of profitability for insurers. So Beasley's pulled back, if you like, from US cyber, as it's said, and there's all sorts going on there. So we just to say, we did some work. Now the SME end of things, so there's another figure which is all companies in the UK, which is 45% have some sort of cyber cover. I don't know if you do you?
No, I don't think so.
Don't you? Expensive. Well, it's expensive. We do at Grace Church, just so work with us, not TIN. And But we have things like Cyber Essentials. It gives us MFA and all that sort of thing. But we needed it for some of the relationships we've got with clients and things. So we do it.
When we did our analysis of the risk, because we put everything into the cloud and with third-party suppliers, so we are no longer on-prem. Then actually, within the contracts that we've got with our third parties, a lot of that stuff is held. It's their responsibility. Okay,
yes,
they're responsible for our data. And the other thing is, we don't hold anything like credit cards or anything like that. So the risk is it would be a disruption thing rather than a
same. And to be honest, that's the same with us. I mean, we have some obviously what might be called personal data, but it's really only the name of somebody and where they work, which I don't consider to be the same sort of personal data where there would be a problem. But yeah, I think you kind of sometimes you buy it just because it's what the procurement people need you to do to feel comfortable. And and actually to an extent it gives me a bit of comfort if we've got an MFA type thing. But anyway, but you're right, it is kind of slightly expensive and complex. And so we do as part of our UK work, we have a group of champions. So they're brokers, grassroots brokers, and we picked up on this cyber issue with them about 3 or 4 months ago. And so the kind of the kind of trends were not too bad in terms of what we were seeing in our data. People seemed to brokers were quite satisfied with what the broking firms were doing. But what the broker said when we get them in a room is really the problem is really around client understanding. So they don't really understand cyber cover, and there's not enough education around it, and it's a kind of slow burn thing, But actually did say that the M&S and other attacks had kind of made it a bit more. Had boosted inquiries about cyber. I think there's something like, I think Graham Trudgill said something like only 7 or 8% of small businesses have cyber cover at all in the UK. Anyway, so it's not mainstream. It can be linked to BI and things like that and so on, and regulatory fines and other things. But it lacks tangibility. So that's the thing. It's not like property cover or other types of cover. You can't quite get your head around what actually would be the benefit of that cover. So I think that needs to be explained a lot more. Most clients, they're saying, the brokers are saying they're more concerned about being fined by a regulator. So if you just didn't do the right thing, also financial loss, but this kind of regulatory thing is quite important. So again, you could do more with that. I don't think we would be, though, from what we've just said. We wouldn't be holding credit cards or anything like that. So we wouldn't be seen as being irresponsible. More broker training. CFC and others do get mentioned for doing good communication around cyber, bundled services, instant reports, response apps, and health checks, and all that sort of thing, which helps. Aviva and Chubb, good broker training. So there is good stuff going on. The other thing, though, is that, for example, CFC you need to have an app, which is a response app. So if there's, if you don't take that app on, they can decline cover for you. So that is a sort of, I think that's a thing on your system that says if there's a problem, CFC would know straight away and get onto it. And if you don't want to do that, if you feel that's intrusive, then, or onerous, you don't want to, you don't do it. And that also can be a bit of a barrier. So that was that. And then there's some issues about higher limits wanted on, say, for example, IT suppliers and things like that. So there's issues there. Too many features. That's the interesting one. That there's like too many things being added, and clients then don't really understand what's what's included and not included because they're a bit befuddled by it, which I completely get, to be honest. And more claim support, interestingly, more hands-on service, and really. So again, you're kind of looking at why don't claims get more involved and all of this sort of stuff. And price is still a key factor, right, in the whole thing. As you just said, it's expensive unless you can really understand those benefits. So I think then there was this final thing, which is really interesting. It's the biggest ask from brokers was that there were more in-premises technical boots on the ground support when something goes wrong. Kind of interesting, that people want people there when there's a problem and solve it, not just some kind of app or something else that sort of, triggers something. And it's interesting. Someone I was talking to the other day was asking me about what do I think of parametric, which we've talked about before, which said, well, it's a financial solution, but it's not a service solution. And I think this is one of those where people are saying we don't want a sort of, automated type of processy type of solution. We want actual people to come and help us out if there's a problem, which I think is a really understandable. And it says that actually we're still very much should be thinking about help and assistance from human beings who know what they're talking about when something's happened. Which again I can really understand, because if it was in the policy that someone would come and visit if you had a hack, or would call you up straight away and handhold you through it, I think that would be very appealing.
I agree.
As opposed to some financial recompense, if you see what I mean.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. The first thing that, thinking about myself as a customer, insurance is put you back into the same financial position as you were before the event happened, the indemnity thing. Whereas that's ingrained in my mind. And so when I think about cyber cover, I'm kind of, that isn't the first thing I'm worried about. It's how do I get my computer to log back in again? So yes, that's interesting.
And you want an explanation, don't you, what's happened and things. We had a small hack, I think about 5 years ago, and it was, we've got an IT provider, and they kind of talked us through it, and it was kind of okay, but it's not the thing of waking up in the morning knowing about or expecting. So it's just like a lot of these things, it is a surprise if it happens, and then you need to have that help. I think also it does imply that a lot more insurance got this problem of it's always a race to the bottom on price, and that's in the psyche. It's kind of baked into the industry. Whereas when you listen to what people are saying, including brokers here, they're saying actually really customers you should communicate with them in the sense of explaining what the problems are, what we can help with, and then they pay more for that additional service, that value add type service of people. And I think people would, but I just don't think we know how to sell that as an industry. I just don't think we know how to deliver it or sell it. I think there are some businesses that do some of this, Coalition and people like that, but they tend to work off automate, apps and software approaches rather than, maybe, with a policy, someone just comes and meets you and has a chat about what you do and how you does it and gives you a few principles in a plan. I think that would be really useful. There's an assumption we know more than we do, if you like, I think, and that we as people running businesses have time to work through all the information, which we don't.
No, hence the role of the broker in many respects.
Well, that's right, and the broker's role is really important, and I think Bee was looking at all of that, and there are initiatives that they're doing. I think it's going to take time. I do think it's an interesting product, at the kind of lower end of things, because it's an opportunity to educate about good practice, I think. And it's kind of surprising that big companies don't have all of this cover in place, but then we've covered that.
Yeah. The start of the show, big organizations have control over nothing.
Well, yes. I mean, I mean, the fact that they don't have this cover in place sometimes is amazing, really. But there we are.
There we go. I was going to ask you, Ben, just to kind of wrap up, is there anything particular looking forward to in 2026? Sound a bit like Jules Holland here.
But, no, nothing. I haven't got any hopes. No, yeah. I mean, what am I looking forward to? You mean in business terms, don't you? Really?
Yeah. In terms of
not like my holiday.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Well, not your holiday, but my holiday. Unless you're going to invite me.
You can come. We've got a villa in Spain. You're very welcome. There's a little room in the basement you can be in. You can join the barbecue every couple of days.
What to time?
Yeah, as long as you wash up after. Yeah, no, I don't know. For us, I think we're going to do some specials and more, a little more kind of themed things. I think I'm looking forward to doing that and a bit more video stuff because I think it's taking off. We're seeing it in some of our data that it's kind of becoming a different medium for explaining things, and more generally linked to that, I really want to do more around data visualization and getting the message out. I think we've been burrowing away for many years, and we got vast archives of data and all sorts of stuff, but I constantly feel frustrated that interesting stuff, I mean, we do it on this show, which is great, but I constantly feel that interesting stuff doesn't get out there, and I wish it could and would, and I wish we could explain things more. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that this year, I think, really.
I think that'd be good. I told you this before, but the little infographic that you put together following the data jam, I mean, you'd be surprised how many people on the briefing calls ahead of TINtech London Market keep bringing it up on screen going,
I know. And now it's in some of the official decks for some of the London Market development. I feel kind of like slightly fraudulent in doing that, but I've done it, and there we are. No, it shows that is. I mean, to be fair, that is a good example of taking something that was quite a complex discussion, actually, in lots of ways at the panel itself. It was covered a lot of territory, but the technology allowed us to take that, transcribe it pretty well. It took a lot of the heavy lifting out of getting to something that was digestible and understandable, and simplified in some ways. But that's the important thing, right? You've got to get the message across in a simple way, and we don't do that. We haven't been able to do that very much. But now I think it is interesting. There's not just video, but things like explainers and all these sorts of things. And I think there's an evolution, I suppose, even a revolution in terms of communication now, I think. And I know there's a lot of whinging and moaning about TikTok or Grok or things, but the other side of all of that is an amazing access to tools that can do it if you're creative.
Yeah,
which clearly I am, Jeremy, because I did that infographic.
Yeah,
God knows that took me a long time to do that.
That's it. Well, it's all in the prep work, isn't it? It's all in the panel discussion, so that's good. I'm looking forward to, and I touched on this in my bits of news, kind of the conversation moving in our world, which is kind of technology and ops and change, to a kind of a more holistic thing. So, and my observation is that the blueprint to kind of putting it on the back burner, originally disappointing as it was, I think has actually spurred a lot of organizations into taking more seriously the fact that they need to invest in these capabilities going forward. Otherwise, they're going to be left behind. So I'm really excited about some of the new technologies, and I've been in, I went to see Simon Squires at AXA Excel, and I think you have as well, and have kind of demo about what what they've been doing, which is, you know, impressive to say the least. So I think those kind of initiatives where that kind of communication that you've just been talking about, coupled with trying to solve some of these traditionally intractable problems around data and the way that, you know, the market works and the costs associated with it, I think we're going to see a real move to the positive over the next.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that, and I think if we can move forward this year, which I think perhaps will, on that whole efficiency side of things and trading and pricing of risk, I think that will be the biggest shift we've seen in the last 25 years, and I think it will be fairly momentous in terms of what it does for everybody in the market. And I do think generally in a good way. I think it will create a much better, healthier environment, more profitable, opportunities for growth, you know, less bogged down in costly, tedious administration, you know, and that's really important. It's not something I look forward to. That's something I hope for, as opposed to.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing it.
Yes. I think we've tended to try and do that every year, but it hasn't always happened.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, good. Right, nice to see you again, Ben. We will see you next week, Friday, and catch you wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks all.